It's like the first time I've seen it do it. Hey, we're back. Straight into it. Our live recording software doesn't actually give us a countdown, so we just let's go straight into it.
You are on stage.
Yeah. Jeez, I don't even know what episode this is. I think this might be episode 51, 52.
Let's just make up a number, to be honest. But
Well, what it is the first episode where Vic and I here on camera. We've got the screen share going, and as per request, I've got some background jazz music, so I couldn't help resist it. But yeah, it's good to have you on, Vic. Well,
yeah, man. I enjoyed your episode going through the Necron Codex. I thought that was awesome. That was the first use of this kind of like live software, and maybe we can do more videos like this because we get to show stuff on the screen in the middle, and I think people will find that interesting.
Really helps. Yep, so much stuff to cover as well. I think once we get a balanced update as well, it'll be cool to do a little bit of a tier list. Everyone loves a tier list.
Definitely.
So of where we think things are. So we haven't had too many shakeups from, I guess, the last time we recorded this. Well, last time there was a big event. Obviously, Necron's dropped, and that'll be probably a centerpiece of what we're going to be chatting about today. But primarily today, we're going to be chatting about the Nottingham Super Major, which is a 300. It's an up to 400 player tournament, but I think it's 352 players, something like that. 5-round event, cut to top 4, Super Major. So there's a couple of things I want to say on the tournament format, but I'm going to give it straight over to you, Vic, first up.
Yeah, what do you want me to talk about, Dave? Where are we starting with this?
Here's a question, because I remember this time last year, actually we were recording the podcast, and I think I said the same thing this time last year, is that the Nottingham tournament is too big for the number of rounds it has, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think even last year we talked about a couple of options where we can. So for context, at a 350 players, you roughly get about 10 undefeated, which only 4 then go to the top 4. So realistically, the top 4 is not even representative of the majority of players that went undefeated. It's actually a pretty small subsection of that. And the tiebreaker metric is not really representative of, I guess, who was most deserved to be in the top 4 as well. So, although is there really one that you could use for 5 rounds? It's pretty tough to come to. So, I remember this time last year, kind of saying, wouldn't it be great if they cut the tournament into multiple tournaments, or they did some kind of multi-podding where they cut after, I don't know, round 2 or round 3 into more pods, etc., and made the cut to top earlier so that, it included more people, and then we could have still potentially undefeated after 7 rounds. But what I was thinking is actually what I thought about was, wouldn't it be great if they, instead of running one giant tournament, they ran 2 tournaments or 3 tournaments that were seeded? So, for example, I think they do this in like marathons and whatnot like that. If you're, a competitive runner, you'll enter in the competitive heat, for example, or whatever. And that way you could actually seed the tournaments, Nottingham Super Major Champions Tournament or something like that, where it's actually people that have a UKTC ranking last year of, or you just order everyone who has that UKTC ranking. And then the tournament is effectively broken up into 3 super majors with the same number of attendees, of course. And then you would actually have tournaments that would probably make a bit more sense for people that want to get first place, but don't make the top cut, but still go 5-0. And then perhaps you'd be playing amongst your peers, more to say. What do you think about that? Is 350 players too many? Is it?
I think you've touched on a lot of different points here. But I'll go backwards. So the last point you just mentioned about splitting up tournaments into kind of seedings, pods, anything like that, which breaks up a larger tournament into smaller chunks so that you can have a reasonable number of games to get to a definite winner. I love that concept. I think the thing that held us back from making that change or moving towards that has been that people love huge tournaments because you get a lot of ranking points from it.
Yeah.
I think with time, as people start to focus less on ranking points, it might become better, but they'll only focus less on ranking points if prizes are available, if there's some incentive to go for the most difficult kind of tournament possible. We don't really have that system in place. UKTC doesn't really give any prizes except for just trophies and pride. which is all great and well. But once you start getting some fancy prizes on the top seeded bracket of the tournament that you just suggested, I think people will start going for that over going just purely for the rankings.
Yeah.
Um,
How
I don't
awesome
know.
would that be
That
if
would be
you
really
actually,
cool.
if you had like a, I've always said, and I still to this very day would love it if instead of trophies they gave you commissioned miniatures that you could actually use on the tabletop.
Hmm.
Me personally, I would love that. I don't know, Shadow Sun or whatever, like the Bellicor or something. Bellicor's maybe a bit too big, but I think you're right in that. Yeah, if you could also add those kind of prize supports to it, that'd be really cool. And actually, it's interesting because for ITC points, you're 100% correct, of course. But for ELO points, you would have a better opportunity to get ELO points if you actually played in a harder tournament. So there is actually already kind of a ranking system in place there, which you would probably benefit from.
True. And ELO is interesting because it's becoming slowly more popular. I kind of wrote it off, Dave. You were mentioning it at the start. I was like, no one's going to care about ELO. But I think people are caring,
Yeah.
especially with the fact that it was quite prominent during the World Championships.
Yep.
So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. In terms of Nottingham specifically, I think Nottingham's the classic case of it is the second most popular UKTC event after LGT.
Hmm.
It's really popular. And realistically, it shouldn't be a 2-day event. It should just be a 3-day event. That's just the quickest kind of solution for it, to
Yeah.
be honest.
Is
Um,
Nottingham bigger than Coventry if you count the 2-day and 3-day? It must be close.
I think it's close, but I
Yeah.
think both the Coventry events were around 120. So I think this is
Yes.
still a third bigger,
Yep.
even combined.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
it's interesting. Yeah, so I hope, like, I think this is a bit of a problem for the season we've got for this year. For the stock standard 2-day 5 round event tournament. Now, the context of this is, of course, is that the UKTCTO runs the business professionally, and what makes sense is that for the majority of his customers, this probably makes a good amount of sense, right?
Mhm.
So we are obviously like the 0.1% of the crowd talking in this case, but I think actually having that dual system on seeded tournaments would be a great, easy, hopefully easy change, but great. And then, if you're an unranked player, you could just always email and say, "Hey, I'm an unranked player. Don't think it'd be fair if I played in the lower bracket this time. Put me in the higher bracket."
Yeah.
And I think I would think that you would still get the same number of attendees, or perhaps even more.
Mm.
There was some different price support there as well.
That's the thing. You need the incentive for both sides, both for the
Yeah.
for the business, for the TO running it, and also for the
Mhm.
players. And I
Yep.
think it is possible with some innovation on the systems that are used at the moment. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how it develops.
Yeah, for sure. So despite that, we've got a pretty well. Would I say a new meta emerging? No, that would be a mistake. We've had Necrons jump on the scene. We've
Hmm.
also had Admech, but you know,
Poor Admech.
yeah, yeah. So what we thought would be great is if we would go through the Nottingham lists.
Hmm.
What our teammates are bringing, what I'm bringing, what Vic's bringing, and a couple of other people kind of compare and contrast. So we've got a couple of Necron lists to look at. So I think we'll leave them to last, perhaps, and
Okay.
then so we're not darting all over the place. So Vic, I'm going to
Yeah.
bring your roster, and
Okay. Yep.
we're going to have a chat through what you brought.
Yeah, let's start off with something a little bit basic, something
Mhm.
that's already been seen in the meta. I brought Chaos Space Marines to this
Yep.
event. I brought it to the last event as well. I thought I'd go back to kind of the roots of what we came up with in Ignite for LGT.
Yep.
We had a core in that where we were playing around the Chosen, but we were also including Forge Fiends and Obliterators in even numbers. So the list I brought is 3 Chaos Lords. 2 of them are undivided. One of them is Khorne and has the Talisman of Burning Blood. The
Yep.
Mats is just slightly better on tough vehicles.
What does
Uh,
the Talisman of Burning Blood do?
so it gives him plus D3 attacks, plus D3 strength every time he fights, and he does a
Cool.
Dark Pact. The Khorne ability is you get lethal hits on 5s to hit.
Nice.
So that him and his unit are pretty good into stuff that's quite tough because they
Yep.
get the lethal hits.
Cool.
We have 1 unit of Nurgle Cultists just to hold the backfield, and then
Awesome.
we have our 3 Chaos Rhinos, which include the 3 units of Chosen we have, as well as the Legionaries we just went past.
Yep.
A unit of 10 Chosen, 2 units of 5 Chosen in there.
Yep.
One of the small units is a Khorne unit. We have 2 Forge Fiends and 2 Obliterator units. It's 2
Yep.
times 2.
One
Each of
Nurgle
those is
and
1 undivided, 1 Nurgle, exactly.
yep. Cool.
We have 1 unit of Slanesh Warp Talons, a unit of Plague Marine allies to go
Yep.
into one of the Rhinos because they're super cheap, and the Blue Scribes as well.
You've been
Very.
rocking the Plague Marines a bit recently. I remember last week you were chatting about, hey, I really like the Plague Marines. If you compare them to Legionaries, they are
Mhm.
10 points cheaper. Did you not have 10 points? No, you didn't have 10 points. So what's the pros and cons between Plague Marines and Legionaries then?
So it's interesting. So the legionaries hit a little bit harder in combat
Mm,
because they have two heavy weapons, but because they're Slanesh, they can explode on fives to hit.
yeah.
They can Dark Pact, whereas the Plague Marines can't Dark Pact.
Mhm.
Because they're Slanesh, they can advance and charge as well. They're both OC2, so that kind of rules both of them out. The Plague Marines have a few advantages, though. They're actually a decent shooting unit because they have two plasma guns in the unit, and they have a Plague Spewer, which is a D6 flamer, which is anti-infantry 2 plus,
Nice.
5 minus 1 1, and it ignores cover. And they still have two heavy weapons in the squad, which are still power fists, basically. They have three, so they have three power fists, but they hit on fours with no dark pacts. So
Yeah.
they're the combo unit. They're somewhere in the middle where they can shoot a bit and punch a bit. They're
Yeah.
still OC2. And importantly, they have the Nurgle keyword. So you can use the Nurgle stratagem for them not to be targeted outside 12.
Oh, shit.
So you get a lot of utility for 80 points in this. They don't hit anywhere near as hard or have as much synergy as they would in Death Guard. But just having that Nurgle strat available to them can allow you to hold primary, which is one of the hardest things to do sometimes in UKTC. Instead of just constantly trading for fives, maybe you can hold a few tens on primary.
Yeah.
So I made one of my units into Plague Marines rather than just more Legionaries or something else.
Toughness 5 as well. Kind of a nice breakpoint.
Yeah, toughness 5, and they have a little special ability. They get +1 leadership basically when they're on an objective, so
Yeah.
they can avoid battle shock. So that's my list. It's extremely balanced, really. It's kind of not leading into Cursed Cultist. It's got a bit of everything and a tool for everything. It's
Yep.
going to be down to me to play through the meta.
It is one of the best armies in the game, though, right now.
Mhm.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think Eldari and CSM are still the kingpins at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think I'm going in with a strong list.
Yeah.
Whether or not, I don't have a clear path to victory here. I think it's going to take a lot of play from me to get through every different type of army out there.
Yeah.
But definitely, I have a game into everything, so I'm
It's
looking
really
forward to
varied at
that.
the moment, too, as well.
Oh,
Cool.
yeah, absolutely. What have you got on the screen, Dave?
Well, we've got Brian's list. Brian
Yes.
is taking orcs. He is the orc himself.
Hmm.
Now, I played against something similar to this, where Brian kind of crumped me a little bit, but
Hmm.
I can see he's changed it up a bit. So I think this is kind of not a standardish looking orc list at the moment, right? We've got the classic kind of 5 to 6 truck. You've got a unit of 10 flash kits, and then you've got kind of Mozrog, one unit of 10 boys with the power claws, 2 units of 5 mega knobs, which I
Yeah.
think these are, a little bit good into tougher targets, right?
That's a very unique choice. This is Brian because he's
Ah,
gone away from the boys and the beast snaggers.
mm,
He's gone away from the squig hogs, and instead he's gone for mega knobs, which have low number of attacks but very high quality attacks at
mm.
a very high strength with dwindling. So I think the mega knobs are the key differentiator between Brian's lists, and I think they're very good to be honest.
So actually, pretty good at digging out like 5 chosen reliably or something like that as well.
Oh yeah, they're good into a lot of targets as long as they're not hoardy targets. And
Yeah,
hoardy targets, you got the flash kits in there who are
yeah,
really, really good. And they're
you
a
got
shooting threat, a real powerful hammer shooting unit.
Yeah, and you've got 5 trucks to tag hordes up as well. One thing I did notice is that he's running all the knobs and boys all with power claws as well. So he's really going for the quality over quantity here as well. And like you said, have the 10 flash kits to back you up in that part of in that department as well.
I mean, me and Brian have a lot of debates about the strength of orcs. I actually rate orcs extremely low in terms of power level, and he's like, "Oh, it's because you never played anyone good at orcs." And he's probably right, and he's probably going to kick my ass in this tournament. But at the same time, I would say, when I see orcs and read their rules, and then I read world eaters and I read their rules, the world eaters are absolutely terrifying to me.
Yeah,
Whereas the orcs, it feels like, okay, you fast for one turn, and then I know exactly where you are.
yeah.
But maybe Brian will prove us wrong. He's bound to. Great player.
I hope it does prove us wrong. So Brian's gone with orcs, a bit of a pastime for him as well, which is
Mhm.
really awesome. Yokel, as people will be completely familiar with this list by now. This is
Beautiful.
just the Eldari list. This is the exact same list he took to Warhammer World Champs,
Mhm.
which I think he got like 10th or 11th place or something like that. Something
Mhm.
crazy high, going X and 1. You've got Phoenix Gem Autark, Huygen, Spirit Seer, Incarn, Triple Spinner, all Shuriken Cannons, of course. One Hawk unit. He loves his 3 Spider units,
Mhm.
so he's gone for that again, and 1 unit of Wraith Guard. The only difference between Yokel and I's list that we played at Warhammer World Champs was instead of the third Warp Spider list, I went with 1 unit of Swooping Hawks, 1 unit of Rangers. So, pretty. I mean, we like to debate the finer points and say it's a huge difference, but to everyone else in the room, it's probably
pretty identical. Yeah,
so,
strong list, really powerful. He's got a tough round 1 matchup though.
Yeah, he's got Grey Knights round 1 versus Mike Duff, who's a lovely guy as well. I played Mike several times. Super nice guy. What are your thoughts on Eldari in the meta at the moment, Vic? Because I think you could probably argue it a few ways, couldn't you, about where it stands relative to the rest of the armies?
Where this particular list stands, there's 2 things which have changed for Eldari. I think they're still extremely, extremely good. But because they were so good and so popular, people understand their rules, understand their tricks, and understand how to deal with the profiles in the list. The Yin Khan is nowhere near as scary now as it was back in LGT time. Now everyone knows, you throw a few mortal wounds into the Yin Khan and, it's going to whittle down. It's never going to be able to heal back up. Same with the Wraith Guard. People understand the movement profiles and the way that Phantasm can be used, so they're not as scary anymore. The list is just powerful because it's powerful and is built around Phantasm and the power of the data sheets in there. The actual output quantity can be a little bit low, and I think there are some lists in the meta which this list is going to struggle against, and the Accursed Cultists are probably the key example of that. I also wonder sometimes if they can get through Necrons quick enough before Necrons get through them, and if they can catch up on the score even after they do that. So I think Eldari sit in a weird place in the meta where they're a powerful army that people know too well and they have tools to deal with.
Couldn't have said it better myself. They're an army, as opposed to Grey Knights, for example, that have the tricks, but they just have actual raw power data sheets underneath that and faction abilities. Whereas Grey Knights are an army that, do have a lot of tricks and whatnot, but the raw fundamental power of the army is actually quite low. So as soon as people get used to playing it, the win rate tends to plummet off the face of the earth. But Eldari, as we all know as well, there are 2 Eldari players. There are Eldari players, and then there are, those extremely good Eldari players. And it kind of feels like you're facing 2 different armies sometimes.
Yep, absolutely. And I think Yokel has a good chance to really compete for this tournament. I think he's got one of the strongest lists in the room.
Definitely. Yep, you can't go wrong with it. So I think that's all of our teammates, right?
That's our team. That's Team Ignite, except for you, Dave.
4 people going. Do we want to get into it already?
I think we should. I think we should touch on your list and the other Necron lists and have a big discussion about it, because that's what people want to hear about.
Okay, so I'm secretly really proud of this list. I think it's one of the best lists I've written in a while, and there's a bit of ego behind this in some sense, where Necrons have come out, and we've got a couple of weeks to digest, and then there's a big tournament coming up as well. So, I wanted to put my stamp on things kind of in ways which I've kind of done before. Remember we had Leviathan Tyranids, we had 30 Skin, and then I played Swift as the Wind. Those were all kind of lists which I kind of built myself, and then took to big tournaments and did really well, and kind of became archetypes after that. So I wanted to make sure that if I was going to submit something, it was going to be what I thought was the most powerful list. And the way I've kind of noticed my list building happen sometimes is there's like an initial reaction of, I think this is really powerful. And this is really common with Guard. I thought this was really powerful. I'm going to run this. This is like the cookie cutter list archetype, and I'm going to optimize it with, smart decisions around cutting the fat and doing things like that as well. Just so I've got like a little bit more of everything. My weapon loadouts are a bit more like adjusted to every scenario and stuff like that. So that's where my previous list was, where I was playing Canoptek Court, which I still think, is really, really powerful list. And then I was like, look, there must be some way I can push the boundaries here. And then I went overhauled all the factions again, went through all the detachments. I built lists for every detachment and played every detachment. And one thing that struck me was the original detachment fundamentally has really good stratagems. And actually the stratagems that were good before are actually... Well, some of the stratagems that weren't good before in that detachment are actually really good now, because the data sheets of the units that are viable have completely changed. So, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Stand Back Up, which is just sisters, get back up on half wounds, 1 CP. Pretty good before. I mean, it meant that your opponent couldn't really epic challenge you, and then you lose your character in your attached unit. But it had a really big limitation. You would instantly get back up. So that meant that actually the attack sequence, you would get back up, they would just keep killing you.
Keep punching you.
So, that was the worst iteration. So when I looked through the stratagems, I was like, what's going to change? And I realized that actually that stratagem has changed in a very key point. It's now you get back up at the end of the phase, which is obviously miles stronger than what it used to be before. Because, for example, let's say someone kills you in combat, you can get back up into phase. They've already consolidated. You stand back up outside of combat, which is great because it means you can't get tied down. So I was like, okay. I looked at the stratagem and thought, what's the best thing you could ever reanimate with this? Infantry character keyword. Wow, you can get 160 point Illumina Saracen back with this stratagem. Oh, that's pretty good.
Nice.
And previous to this in our team chat, I don't know if you remember this, but I was like, before I was looking at Awakened Dynasty, I was like, man, Illumina Saracen, like, damn, dude, this guy's like 160 point Catan when you think about it, because his profile's pretty nice. He's got a 2-up save, 4-up invulnerable. So immediately that gets around some of the problems that Catan have, which is that he has a 2-up base save. So he doesn't die to like really cheap stuff. He's toughness 8 with 9 wounds. So T8, really nice breakpoint, 9 wounds, okay. And you're like, oh, that's pretty tanky. But then he has a 4-up feel no pain. Like, wait, what? 4-up feel no pain. Yeah,
he's a beast.
Feel no pain. And then, so he doesn't half damage, though, of course. So in a lot of circumstances, he's actually more tanky than a Catan. And in some circumstances, he's not as tanky, right? But the fact he also has like 8 relevant melee attacks, and he's got a good shooting profile as well. But then, so let's just say, and he moves 8 inches too, which for some reason is, I think he got like +2 movement or something. A lot of things kind of got that. So I thought, this, if anything, is the ideal target to reanimate in a strat. So I looked at this unit, I was like, this is a great unit you can just brawl with right from turn 1. If they commit into him, you might kill him, you might not. If you don't kill him, I'm going to reanimate D3 wounds, then my Technomancer is going to heal for D3 wounds, and then I'm OC3. So, okay, great. My rest of my army can collapse onto. Oh, I forgot. He's also lone op within 3 inches of another Necron unit. Yeah, okay, cool. And if they do commit and kill into him, 1 CP, get back up. You've effectively not killed him. And if you've taken Assassinate, which maybe you would against my list, then you get your points for that. But the tempo on the board, you're going to lose a lot of tempo because he's so hard to kill for how much you have to commit to him. And the fact that 1 CP undo your whole activation is really, really powerful. So immediately I was like, if there's any unit to play in this detachment, Illumina Cirrus is the one, which is cool because in a lot of other detachments, he doesn't make a lot of sense because you're pricing into him just a one-time live-only unit, which he's still pretty good at that rate, but a twice living unit is obviously really, really good. Okay, so that's the get back up strat.
Cool.
So we all know that Canoptek Reanimator has been nerfed, and it's been nerfed in the sense that its aura is only 3 inches, and obviously I would play the 90.1 at 12 inches in my list, of course, but I've got a 3-inch Canoptek Reanimator to work with. I thought, you know what, it's great. The thing about Wraiths is that when you reanimate them, you're often reanimating just D3 wounds in your command phase. Now, you've got a 4-wound model that's probably going to be on, most likely, it's going to be between 1-2 wounds. Because if it's on 3, it's only taking 1 damage. So 2/3 of the time, you're going to have 1 or 2 wounds back. Now, if you roll a D3, you're not really reanimating more than 1 model most of the time on that. So on average, if you have 1 Wraith, you reanimate at D3 on 2 wounds. On average, it just goes back to full. You don't get a full base back. So I thought, you know what? Doubling your reanimations on Wraiths for 2d3 increases the chance that you resurrect a Wraith by a huge margin, which is really big. You get more movement and you get to go. But then I realized is that actually Wraiths are quite difficult to kill and they're quite tanky. So they're even more difficult to kill and tanky if you have the 1 CP reanimation strat in them as well. What will sometimes happen is someone will collapse into your unit of Wraiths. They'll kill them down to like 1 Wraith and a half or 1 Wraith and a Techno. Then if you can use the strat and then reanimate in your command phase, you're effectively healing 4d3 plus 1, which is basically 2 Wraith bases. So the difference between you having, maybe +1 Wraith versus like maybe +2, maybe another Wraith is absolutely enormous. Because then let's say you're on 1 Wraith, you resurrect 4d3 plus 2, that's 2 Wraiths plus 1 wound, you heal it with your Techno. On average, you go at a 3 out of 4 wounds. So now you've got 4 Wraiths, one which is 3 out of 4. And then you swing on your turn. So Really, really good. I mean, the reanimation strat is one of the best strats in all Necron codexes, and it completely changes the math in terms of where does your opponent, react, or where do they act, and how much do they commit into it. It's really, really difficult to judge your outputs into these units when you have to take into account the fact that they can reanimate after you shoot and after you fight as well.
Yeah, beautiful.
So I think that one's really, really, that's a core stratagem for the Awakened Dynasty, I think, still.
Yeah.
And then, Wraiths, they don't really hit very hard in combat, right?
Mhm.
And that's kind of the downside of them. So I actually think Wraiths they're good. Don't get me wrong, they're good. But they're actually they're not super imbalanced because they actually don't have the damage output. They can't fall back and charge. And these are huge limitations when you play against really good players.
Mhm.
The damage output kind of lacks, mainly because they have a bad chance to hit and they have low AP.
Mhm.
But Awakened Dynasty also has a stratagem, 1 CP, that 1 CP you get +1 strength and +1 AP.
That's really
What
good.
else do you want on Wraiths? Great. Okay, you jump into combat with 5 chosen. I'll reanimate, and then I'll activate the strat for +1 AP. And then my chance of killing you have gone up drastically.
Mhm.
What this also enables too is, and I've done my list, is that you can actually take the whip coils as a somewhat viable option. Now the whip coils are double the attacks, but 0 AP and -1 strength. But if you put them at AP1, it's way better into things like rhinos and whatnot like that as well. Way better into cultists, way better into even rubric greens and stuff like that. So I've got one cheeky squad that takes advantage of that strat with 4 whip
Nice.
coils and 2 claws. And 4 whip coils are just way better into a cursed cultist as well, of course.
Mhm. Oh, very cool. That's a nice tech.
I'm running all with the particle beamer as well, just because if you get locked in combat, you do want to be shooting there as well. The shooting options are not really that great either way.
Sure.
So those are those 2 strats. Now, all right, Mr. Immortals. Okay, it's just been
Let's see
FAQ
it.
for errata today. And the main benefit of the Canoptek Court is, of course, you get access to 4 rerolls to hit.
Mhm.
Now, this with Immortals was really good, especially pre-FAQ, where you could Devastating Wounds their attack. But even without the Devastating Wound strat, if you have a Plasmancer, you have 20 shots with 4 rerolls to hit, exploding 5s, and in the Awakened Dynasty, you hit on 2s. So you reroll everything, you get an average of about 39 hits, and then you reroll everything if they're on an objective as well. So you still have access to 4 rerolls to hit, and where you want to use that, of course, is your Immortals most of the time.
Mhm.
So you've still got that big Immortal brick activation. You just don't have the Dev Wounds, which means that you're a little bit worse in killing big targets like Incarn or maybe Deep Striking and then shooting a Night Spinner.
Mhm.
So I'm playing 2 units of Immortals, and I've got the Plasmancer and the Chronomancer.
Sweet.
Now, the reason I'm playing 20 Immortals as well is because actually with the Lumina series, the Immortals become significantly better.
Mhm.
These guys are legitimately difficult to kill if you've got a Lumina series. They provide an aura of Armor of Contempt, which means that you're effectively running a 1 wound model, toughness 5, 2-up base save. And if they're shooting with range, you're effectively on a 1-up save.
Yep.
So that's really powerful. Now, what they actually Lumina does as well is in combat, it gives you +1 AP as well.
Mhm.
So you can actually charge 10 Immortals into something. You hit on 2s, and then you wound on 5s re-rolling. If you're attacking a Marine, then you wound on 4s re-rolling because they're on an objective when you charge them, of course, and your OC2. And then you can use the strat as well. So you can actually make your Immortals 5 - 2, 1, 20 attacks that hits on 2s, and then wounds on 4s with Twin Linked.
Very cool.
Illumina makes them a lot better, makes them hard to kill, and guess what? Immortals are pretty hard to kill if you've got the reanimation strat as well. So let's say you try and kill them,
absolutely.
boom, reanimate. So really big fan of the 20 Immortals Illumina series in the Awakened Dynasty. Kind of the synergies just kind of all come together there. As you can tell, I've been and I was working on this list like in secret as well, so for ages. So then we've got the Royal Warden, which I don't think anyone else is playing as well. He
Mhm.
makes your Immortal unit fall back and shoot, or fall back and charge. So that unit that you charge
Cool.
an objective, close out you, fall back and shoot. Or what you can do is you can play the Veil of Darkness, which is a big reason to play the Awakened Dynasty. It lets you teleport your Immortals at the end of your opponent's phase, deep strike 9 inches away. Okay, great. So you can deep strike your Immortal brick that has exploding 5s, spend 1 CP, reroll all hits, and then you can be within 3 inches of your Lumina series, so you get AOC and +1 save, and then you can make a 9-inch charge somewhere if you're going to try to do that too.
Awesome. Nice.
The
That's cool.
the Royal Warden also has 4 attack, 4 shots at 5 minus 2/2 if you're within Illumina range as well, which is not irrelevant because he hits on 2s. He's going to be rerolling all hits and wounds because of the strat, and he's an immortal unit. All right. Yes.
Oh, the Satan. What's up with the choice here?
Yeah. So I think this is a really interesting kind of decision point in Necrons at the moment. It's whether you play, if you're playing a Satan, which I think is probably viable to play all of them. If you're going to play one, are you playing the Nightbringer or the Void Dragon? Now, honestly, if you took my list and just went, David, I don't own a Void Dragon, I'm playing a Nightbringer, I probably couldn't fault you. It's that close. They're razor thin. Each of them have pros and cons, which is really cool as well. The Nightbringer is really small and it can fit inside a small ruin for UKTC, which is obviously very relevant. But the Void Dragon has offers something to your army which you kind of it has a solution to some problems here. One of the problems that will often happen is that your race will get tagged by kind of redundant things like rhinos and whatnot like that, right? But the Void Dragon has on a 2-up drainy vehicle for D3. He's got an anti-tank vehicle gun as well. So he actually increases your chance of just shooting that vehicle while it's in combat. Your race can then charge something afterwards as well. So I've gone with the Void Dragon. Now the Nightbringer does have that now as well with the Gaze, but it's D3 shots, so it's a little bit less reliable.
Yep.
And obviously I've got all my I've got the Plasmancer who can throw a grenade as well, and then I've got the Immortals that can shoot that Rhino in combat as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I've gone for a nice little complementary amount of anti-tank. I'm running 3 heavy destroyers, just one-offs, which nice. I've really, really liked. 50 points. You can put them all in reserve. Off the top of my head, I can put all 3 of these guys in reserve and the Locust Destroyers, and I can put the Void Dragon in reserve as well. So all my small stuff and the Catan that can get slowed, I can put in reserve as well. Now, these guys are really good. Just put them somewhere where they're going to continuously shoot. You can start one on the board. They move 8 inches now, which is really good. And they're really good into things like Rhinos. Obviously, they're going to turn up and tag your Wraiths. And they're really good into Forge Fiends and whatnot like that, of course, as well.
Yep. Nice. Really good profile.
The Locust Destroyers, I've got 2 of. Basically, these guys are just the cheapest singular unit you can get. So I play tactical most of the times. So just having these 2 guys is really nice. They could turn up, get behind enemy lines or something like that as well.
Hold your backfield, maybe, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then I've got, like I talked about, 18 Wraiths, and then I've got Canoptek Reanimator as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone for 4 coils, and then the rest of the race just have 6 particle casters and 6 claws. So this is what I've gone with. I hope it's good, but I really tried to push the boundaries and just try and think about the next iteration of what people were already going to think about and come up with. And I hope that it'll shine through as being the best list kind of in a couple of weeks to come as people kind of try it more out. But there's quite a few archetypes for Necrons, which I think shows that it's a pretty successful codex and that a lot of people are trying a lot of different things.
Definitely. Yours is the most unique, though, I think. I think it's also very clever, Dave, because sometimes you see lists which are good, have all the aspects are good. Like the durability is very high in this list. Yep. The output, you found ways of compensating for an area of the codex which looks like it has weak output, but actually you've got decent melee output and shooting output in this list, both versus vehicles and also versus infantry. So like against swarms of infantry. Yep. You have a little bit of mission play chaff as well across 5 different destroyer units. And, I think you'll score high as well with this list. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, it will be. I can't wait. I mean, the Necrons are really popular at Nottingham. I was hoping I'd be the only person playing Awakened Dynasty, but there is one other person.
There's one more.
And his list makes no sense to play Awakened Dynasty at all. So I'm not sure if it was a typo on his behalf, but yeah, he's playing like 4 Catan or something like that, and so it's completely different from mine. So yeah, the majority of people, I think about 60% of lists were Canoptek Court, and about 30% were the Hypercrypt, and then we get on. So that's the list.
Shall we compare this to a Canoptek Court list? Do you have anyone?
Yeah, there's one that I really like. Josh Roberts' list. I thought was really clever, and obviously it's most of these. One thing I wanted to say about the Awakened Dynasty. What I realized is that race with 4 rerolls to hit on 4s is a 75% conversion rate, but race with +1 to hit is a 66% conversion rate. Mm-hmm. So actually, you only lose 9% chance to hit with your Wraiths, which is actually not that big, considering it's an ability you will always have regardless of whether or not you control objectives.
Yeah.
But you do lose out on great things, which Josh is playing, of course, like the Canoptek Doomstalkers.
Just on that point, the +1 AP is hugely more relevant, right?
Yeah,
That swings the math way towards the Awakened Dynasty for output. So
yeah. So, for example, 6 Wraiths in combat with a Rhino with +1 AP do have a chance to kill it on average, which is very big. Whereas most of
it's
the time you're
huge.
getting 2 turns. So, if a Rhino charges you, you get 6 guys into attack on their turn. You've got a very good chance at AP2 of killing it.
Yep.
Right, Josh Roberts. This is pretty similar to a list that I was playing.
Oh,
He's
Saracen
playing.
here. Oof.
Yeah, so this is interesting. He's got
Yeah.
a couple of interesting decision points here, which I think are not so obvious. But yeah, I think I would probably still play a Catan in Canoptek Court, but I think Josh has tried to squeeze more things in and downgrade what would be a Catan into Illumina Cirrus because, like I said before, he's kind of that 160 point Catan. He's also playing 20 Immortals, so he's going to try. When you play Illumina, you're a lot more biased to trying to get 20 Immortals because he does actually buff them substantially. So he's playing Canoptek Court. He's got the Illumina Cirrus, of course. He's got the Overlord with the Translocation Shroud,
Just
which
one.
is really good. Auto Advance 6.
Yep.
He's gone double Plasmancer. Now, this is a bit greedy, but obviously double Plasmancer is quite good.
It's the output, but
It's a
not
lot
the
of damage.
sustain.
And it's actually the grenade strat's really good as well. So they just grenade constantly. So a lot of people don't know also is that Wraiths have a grenade strat as well. They can, if they make a normal move over something, they grenade for number of models in their unit. So you actually 7 dice grenade someone when you make a normal move. Just really powerful. So someone drops an incount into your line, you can actually almost, if you grenade it with 3 Wraiths, you can almost kill it straight away. So don't do that if you're playing Eldari. Yeah, so he's gone double Plasmancer, which means he doesn't have the Fire and Fade unit. Now, I'm a big fan of 1 Fire and Fade unit because I think the UKTC runes work out really well for that. But look, I mean, double Plasmancer, it's a lot of damage. If you're trying to win your games high, can't fault it. The grenade on them is really relevant as well for digging things out like rhinos and stuff too.
Yep.
He's gone Technomancer. Now, what's interesting is that he's gone for all 3 enhancements, which
cool.
I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of because a lot of times I'm trying to reduce the amount of points and redundant points. But he's got the one of them is I think -1 to hit from ranged. He's got 18 wraiths, so that's why it's 3 Technomancers. One is infiltrate, I take it, and another is reroll 1s to wound, I think. So yeah, bit of utility in that one for sure. Right, 20 Immortals. He's gone the Tesla Carbine on both. So these are the exploding double sustained. Now, he's gone for 2 units of Canoptek Acanthrites. These are interesting. I've never seen them in real life, so I was really hesitant about them. I feel like they're going to be quite a spindly model, but the Void, the Cutting Beam is like a melter. So they're like a infiltrating, or I think it's a scout moving, fast moving melter unit, which if you go first on some close deployments, gives you a good opportunity to kill a Rhino. And they're a Canoptek unit, of course, so if he's playing them for scoring, they're not as ideal, I feel, because their models are quite bizarre. Like, once again, I haven't seen them only on PTS. But, they're kind of like Tomb Bladey models, if you know what I mean. But they're really cool, though. I'm really interested to see how these go. I think they're kind of good if you get the jump on someone to open up vehicles as well. And to be fair, he can shoot rhinos in combat, so that's not bad.
Maybe they should have just been this next unit, though.
Yes, Canoptek Doomstalker. I've got 3 of them down there.
They're very good.
I really love them. I would play 3 in every single list. I think they just offer you a really solid backbone of your army. You can play them somewhat aggressively because even if they do take massive damage, you heal them and then heal them with your Technomancer. So it's not like a Forge Fiend where you're like, I'll expose it, but then if it goes down to 5 wounds, like, I could pact and then die and hazardous. So I don't really want to do that. Yeah, the Doomstalker, you're like, commit into it. Who cares, And then, you're down it to 2, then I hide it for 2 turns, and then I come back and shoot you the next turn, or something. Or you move and I Overwatch you on 5s, full rerolls. These guys are great. Overwatching on 5s with full rerolls is great. I think for the points, they're great for what you get. This is a really good example, I think, of a unit that is good, but only in a detachment, for example, which is good because it's not oppressive, it's not overpowered, it's just really solid. And when you see them in the Canoptek Court, you're like, that makes sense, cool.
The name matches up.
Doomstalker. The name matches up. Yes, yes. Every single one has
Canoptek down the line.
And he's gone for some Scarabs and then 18 Wraiths as well. He's gone Particle Casters and Claws on everyone. I think everyone has just moved to the pistols in combat because you get tagged so much. You'd rather just have the pistol shoot in combat. So yeah, this is it's an interesting list. I think the double player's Mansa might be a bit greedy. But he has got the 2 units of Immortals as opposed to playing the Catan as well. So he's going to be able to dump the Immortal Wounds out like no tomorrow. And yeah, we'll have to see how it plays.
Good luck, Josh.
Interesting list. Yeah, I like it. I'm a fan.
How does the output of this list compare to the output of your list, would you say?
Oh, yeah.
It's just the dev wounds is the difference, right?
So the dev wounds is the big difference. Yeah, you're definitely right. But I think in the Wraith-Off versus Wraith-Off, the reanimation strat really does reign supreme.
Okay.
And if you can reduce the number of units available on both players' sides to where you've got, your Wraiths versus their Wraith, if I focus on killing Chaff, then it's going to be a little bit better for me, I would think, in the long run here. It's difficult to tell without playing it. But yeah, the reanimation strat, I don't actually think 6 Wraiths attacking 6 Wraiths will kill maybe 1 model if you use the reanimation strat, for example. So then after put the whip coils up to strength 6, AP 1, which would be I'm not bad on that. And then the damage 2 weapon actually goes to strength 7 as opposed to 6, so you wound on 3. So the Awakened Dynasty stratagem is often just +1 to wound, +1 AP.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. I mean, he's got a little bit less of the direct anti-tank, that's for sure. So I would say his list is quite vulnerable to getting tagged by things like just random stuff like rhinos and stuff like that.
Sure. Interesting.
Yeah.
I think this is the most common archetype, isn't it, that we're likely to see a very similar list to this.
Yeah, so if you're listening and you don't really know anything about Necrons, this is probably the most common archetype you'll find. 12 to 18 Wraiths, a couple of Catan, 1 unit of Immortals, and then kind of Chaff that surrounds that as well.
Very interesting. All right.
Another interesting list is Chris.
So on initial take, Dave, I think Chris's list is the strongest one.
Okay, here we go.
3. Oh, I think it's close between you and Chris here. And Chris and Anthony Chu, both of them do a podcast called The Lion's Den, which is a Team England podcast. They went through a lot of lists as well. So I definitely recommend checking out that one. But he goes through his list as well. He's very confident. Very, very confident.
Nice. This is the Hypercrypt. So this is the other very common detachment which you'll see. And the core premise of this detachment is that you can pick up what will normally be 4 units every turn. And then you can bring them in from Strike Reserve, or if you have the Deep Strike ability, you can bring them in from Deep Strike. Now, if you have the Deep Strike ability, you can do that on turn 1 as well. So it's kind of nice. Cool. 2 Chronomancers. The Dimensional Overseer, I believe, is the one where you can pick up another unit.
3.
Yes, 3 Chronomancers. Yes, sorry. So I think I know where this list is going. He's got 2 Catan. So he's gone for the Void Dragon, the Nightbringer, which I think is 3 Catan. Okay, interesting. Yeah, okay.
3.
So
it's just powerful in this detachment, right? Because of the teleport.
Yeah. These Catan are often limited, though, simply because they don't have the Deep Strike keyword, whereas the Transcendent Catan does have the Deep Strike keyword. So a lot of times I don't know if you're going to be teleporting these Catan, and if you do, you'll be time warping yourself 1 whole turn unless you somehow make a 9-inch charge, which isn't possible. I mean, it's not impossible because you'll probably be doing it with multiple of them a turn. Now, this is the classic combo, which you'll see all the time, and if you're listening on the podcast, it's the Locust Lord with Arisen Tyrant. Basically, what that does is that when you come in from hyperphasing, you get 4 rerolls to hit, and this is always played on an Gorse Destructor. Gorse Destructor unit of 3 heavy destroyers. Basically, this unit is legitimately very good, but it is reasonably expensive. You're paying what is basically 105 points on an almost dead character, but he does have a Resurrection Orb, which makes him a bit more tankier, to get 4 rerolls to hit, which is good because this unit here has a lot of damage on it. It's going to be 36 shots at 611 and 4 rerolls to hit, exploding 6s and hitting on 3.
Oh, that's the Exterminator, isn't it?
The Enigmatic Exterminator is the multi-shot one. Yeah,
nice.
And then it rerolls 1s to wound against infantry as well. He's got a lot of destroyers here.
Yeah,
he's got
3 units of
3 with the flat 6 gun. So, potentially that's going to be good against vehicles and stuff like that as well. Maybe it's going to be good against Catan, but it's difficult to say what the math on these guys into Catan is like as well. The only thing I don't like about the heavy destroyers, and I don't like them in my list for this matter as well, is that whenever they move, they hit on 3s. So with no rerolls, it can oftentimes be a bit tough to get these big flat damage weapons to hit.
Yeah.
But if you're shooting a vehicle monster, you reroll 1s to wound. So oftentimes if you roll 3+ to hit, you're like, great, it's gonna win. Three units of Tomb Blades. I don't know off the top of my head what the Shadow Loom output was. I looked at this earlier actually because I was curious what output you want to take. I take it you take the Twin Tesla Carbine because it's probably going
Yeah,
to.
the Shadow Loom's, I think, the one of the defensive buffs, like the invulnerable save or something.
Yeah, is
And
it the 3
then
plus save and the moves
-1
8?
to hit something.
Yeah, okay.
I think they have a built-in move 6 after they shoot,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
which is
they're
the
pretty
game
fast.
plan with this list, isn't it? So
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, this list is obviously gonna. I mean, so one of these units of Immortals has Deep Strike, which I think is the Osteoclave Fulcrum, perhaps.
mhm.
So I mean, move, shoot, move, and get onto your objectives. It's a good game plan, and if you have to be, and if you want to counteract that by ringing your objectives, obviously they're going to be able to shoot you with its backbone that can come in from the side.
So when these units, if they don't have native deep strike, they can't just do Tomb Blades have deep strike?
I don't think so off the top of my head. No.
No, so they can only come in from strat reserves with this
Yeah.
particular rule.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
So the hyperphase lets you put units back into strat reserve, and if
Mhm.
you have the deep strike keyword, you can arrive via deep strike.
Yeah.
So a risen tyrant needs to come in from. I take unless I'm missing something. I don't think destroyers have. Oh, actually, here we go. Can you see my Wikipedia?
Oh my god, I'm sure that's not allowed.
Oh, we're not sponsored by anyone. Fuck
Yeah, it's fine.
it. So let's look up, for
Let's see
example,
Necrons. I'm
a
doing the
unit for
same.
models. Yeah, so it doesn't have deep strike, and then the heavy
Tomb
destroyers.
Blades? Oh, yeah.
Uh,
I'll check Tomb Blades. Yeah, they don't. Weird.
So yeah, I mean it's a big limitation, right? I mean that'd be nice if you. I mean that's the thing about the Hypercrypt. That's one of the big limitations is that you can't just drop anywhere and do it, but you can use the strat to drop 3 inches away, which
Yep.
is perhaps what some people do as well.
And would that then allow them to deep strike, or is it still
Yeah,
3 inches away strat reserve?
yeah.
No.
So that one kind of supersedes the kind of need to come in on the board edge. Is that you can
Got it.
just do it like that.
So
You can
it'll be
only do
like
that.
one unit doing the deep strike thing every time.
Exactly, yeah. You can only do it with 1 unit a turn. So maybe if you drop your immortals 3 inches away, fire and fade onto objective 5 inches. And if you're going to stay on that objective, then perhaps you just need to take shooting from
Okay.
the destroyers, perhaps.
That's a lot less strong than I thought it was. I thought everything was deep striking. Because if everything's deep striking, then it's very hard to hide. But if everything's coming out of strat reserves,
Yeah.
then at least you know the firing lanes that they
Yep.
can get quite
So your
constantly.
Void Dragon and your Nightbringer have to come from strat reserves, which is just the board edge.
Unless you do the 3-inch thing.
Yeah, unless you 3-inch your Catan,
Mhm.
which then it can't get into combat, and then they
can
just
just
kill
shoot.
them free, probably.
Got it. Which is obviously not what this list is made for.
Yeah, I suspect not. No, yeah, I suspect there's probably going to be a lot of 3-inch deep striking with the Immortals. The only thing is the Immortals almost do no damage here, right? And if you 3-inch deep strike an Immortal squad, you're going to be giving up Assassinate as well, guaranteed. So there's a disadvantage to that. Taking Assassinate would be very good against a list like this, I would suspect as well, because either you're killing the Immortal bricks or you're taking out the Catan, which also give you Assassinate points as well, and then you take Deploy Teleport Homers, which is in the middle of the board, which they won't be in because they can't deep strike in the middle of the board unless they put their Catan in the middle of the board.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, so there's limitations to it, but honestly, I think this is a really good example of a really well done codex. It's super deep. On the very first tournament, we've seen 3 really good players take 3 really different lists. So it's really cool. I would like to see maybe a unit of 6 wraiths in a list like hyperphasing. I think even in the non-court, non-dynasty list, I still think unit of 6 wraiths is pretty good. So, but
It's
yeah,
kind of
obviously,
cool. He has no wraiths. Josh
Yeah.
has no Satan. You have
Yeah.
everything. You win.
3 different lists. Yeah. So what are your? I guess Vic, what are your kind of thoughts about Necrons? What are your do you think they're like a huge bully? What do you think they're going to come in and like destroy the meta? Is it going to be Necron season or?
It's a tricky one. My gut instinct tells me that they're just a strong army. They're not like overpowered or anything. I think where they sit at the top of the meta is unclear, to be honest. And I think this event is going to answer a lot of questions for us on their power level. So it's going to be interesting. They're very popular here. So hopefully we should get some good data just from the variety of players that are bringing Necrons.
Yep.
So yeah, let's see. I think they're going to sit somewhere near the top. And arguably, they might be good enough to sit because at the moment, I think even the very best armies, Eldari, CSM, I think there are armies that compete against them.
Yep.
And I think Necrons is one of those armies that competes against them.
Yep.
So whether or not they're stronger or weaker than Eldari CSM just depends on who you are and who your opponent is and what's the context of what you're playing. So
Yeah.
I think they're right up there.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, I think they're going to be interesting. The only thing I would say about the data coming out of this event is because it's 350 players at 5 rounds, it's going to be difficult to actually say, well, Necron's performed this well because the first 3 rounds are going to be likely people who maybe have had one game into Necrons. How much are you really winning there just because your opponent isn't familiar with your army? So I hope we get some Necrons that go into the top cut and we can actually get some real contextual games and see how they play out. I think you're right. Necrons are. I've heard this a lot on the internet as well. Is that Necrons are some kind of really stat checky army, or 18 wraiths is just a stat check, which I think is actually really wrong. I think 18 wraiths it's very easy to say that when you look at a list like, 18 wraiths because they're so tanky. But the reality is that if you try and stat check your opponent with 18 wraiths, you're going to get tagged, you're going to get broken up, and you're going to get precision and epic challenge. And then your list is actually going to have such little output after that you're gonna just fall apart. So any game which I've actually tried to stat check someone, it's actually gone a lot worse for me when I was playing Canoptek Court, for example, than if I just actually played really passive, use my 2 stratagems to bait my opponent into bad positions, and then capitalize on things on top of that. Because since your output is so low, you need to dedicate an abnormal amount of resources to actually killing what you do kill. And then it's the same with your opponent. They need to, because your stuff's hard to kill, they need to dedicate more than that. And because your stuff has low output, you need to dedicate more to killing. So
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. Oh, it's going to be exciting. I'm really excited for this tournament.
me too.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be a good
Let's
vibe.
were there any other really spicy? Nassim Hussain is
Nasib, we gotta do
Astra
Nasib. Come
Militarum.
on, Dave. This is awesome. I love the guard list. I think they're really, really strong.
Yep.
Without being absolutely busted, I think they're just all round strong. And you're gonna know a lot about this list, aren't you? It's
Yes. Yeah.
got some
So
stuff in
I
there.
guess this is like my list has sort of done the rounds, so to speak, because I played guard in two big online team events for our team, the Stat Check and the Try Hard Team Tournament, where we won the Try Hard Team Tournament and we're in the finals with already 8 points in the Vibe Check, which I played guard in. And I actually practiced guard a lot. I practiced it a lot after LGT for Worlds potentially, and pre LGT, of course. And I decided, I'm going to play in the team tournament. And so, yeah, a lot of popularity in guard picked up, especially one thing that I innovated, which was playing 30 Kaskin with
Kazakid.
ones. Yeah, so you'll see that this is probably common in people that are going to take these builds. Is going to be the 30 Kaskin. So guard are actually in a pretty good state right now. I would say there's quite a lot of build diversity actually in terms of the core, what you take around your core package. So you'll see lists that just run 18 Bulgrins. You'll see multiple tank commanders, and all of those will run 30 Kaskin. And then you'll see like either no transports or 2 transports, or most of them play 3 Manticores, and then you'll see maybe 2 Basilisk or no Basilisk after that as well. So that's what I call build diversity, but it's obviously
Just the same units in all of them.
yeah, it's not that much build diversity compared to Necrons, for example. So you've got Leontis, who joins the platoon command squad. This lets you order from 24 inches, which is really flexible. 2 tank commanders for giving your 2 tank orders. Double plasma on these, and the Demolisher. Demolisher is really good because it just does so much more damage reliably, and 24-inch range is really not that big of a deal. Plasma is kind of nice against blast units like a Cursed Cultist, for example. Ursula Creed lets you use the Fields of Fire strat for free, which is why you take her. 1 unit of Catachan Jungle Fighters and 1 unit of Death Corps of Krieg. The
This
Death
is
Corps of
weird.
Krieg actually join the Platoon Command Squad and Lord Solar Leontis and
Oh,
kind of
cool.
create like a super, a massive unit. Sorry, actually, the Catachan Jungle Fighters might join that. And then Ursula Creed joins another unit basically, so that you can use what I'm assuming is a mortar in here somewhere. No mortar. Okay, so
No mortar. Is it in the platoon command squad?
yeah, you're right. Actually, sorry, yeah, it's in the platoon command
There
squad.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I don't play a platoon command squad, so yeah, you can have a mortar in that, and then it joins the Death Corps of Krieg, so it makes your 2 attached characters kind of tanky, so they can't get killed if your opponent's playing indirect. Catachan Jungle Fighters just scout 6, so they're a pretty good move block against things like World Eaters, for example.
Good idea.
On
Yeah,
your
I
run.
like that.
Scout move 6. 2 units of Bulgrin. Vulcan are really good for their points, especially when you combine them with the ability to order, which they're usually quite difficult to order. But this list, for example, is designed to order these guys consistently. They basically have 4 attacks at 7, 1, 2, and then
Good
they
profile.
have a 4 up invuln, T6, -1 damage, 6 up feel no pain. So really, these guys are a consequence of being good because many things in the meta are no one's looking at them. So
Mhm.
no one's got tech to really kill these things at the moment. I would say Immortals are probably quite good into them though. So that's
Mhm.
probably the one thing you want to watch out for, mainly because they're damage one, right? So they're so consistent into them. And here we go, my favorite boys. 3 units
Best
of
unit.
Kasrkin.
They're so cool.
The really good part about Kasrkin is that you can pay 2 CP to bring them back. So when I originally thought of the list, this kind of archetype, I was playing 3 units of just regular infantry, and I thought, you know what, for 45 more points, I get a such better unit, and I can
Mhm.
bring them back.
Mhm.
And they solve a big problem with the Melter Mine. Now, commonly, you'll use this Melter Mine to maybe jump out of a transport or advance, and then, or maybe just like move, shoot, and then charge something, particularly things like rhinos that are really popular in the meta right now. So this is your unit that slows the game down, chops up parts of the board, has insane attrition because every time you lose a unit of it, you're going to spend 2 CP to get it back.
Mhm.
It orders itself from off the board, comes in with an order, and then can shoot its rapid fire guns as well. So really nice, super versatile. One of the coolest units in the game, I'd say.
Yeah. Really cool.
3 Manticores, this is your backbone. They provide really consistent damage, and they're obviously insanely good into things like Wraithguard and Chosen as well, which are both
Mhm.
very popular in the meta. And 2 Scout Sentinels. Scout Sentinels are really key for activating your army and increasing your efficiency. They let you ignore the indirect penalty, and they give you reroll ones as well. So
Yeah, very
really, really
powerful.
good. You could
Yeah.
spot something, come in with your Kasrkin, 2s reroll ones to hit, which is really nice. Or you can spot something, hit on 2s +1 to hit order, and then hit on 2s with your Manticores as well. So
Now, I have a question, Dave.
sure.
You and Nas play against each other, or now let's not say you. Let's take you out of it. Let's take one of these Canoptek Court lists and put it
Uh-huh.
up against this. How does that matchup look?
Ooh, I would say this list would definitely struggle against 3 Catan. For sure.
Okay.
I think Chris Kinnear's list should do very, very, very well against this list because
Mhm.
he's got 6 heavy destroyers and he's also got they can teleport and he's got 3 Catan as well. So
Yeah.
uh, really good. You can rapid ingress the Catan when you pick them back up as well on your opponent's turn.
Mhm.
I think you might be able to do that. You might not be able to though. But rapid ingressing your Catan versus these lists is obviously good anyway.
Mhm.
So I would favor Chris's list in that one, and then the no Catan build with Josh's, I think it would really depend on the board. I think if you have a deep angle board, I think Nassim's list is probably favored. But I think if you have a close board, such as corner deployment, then I think Josh's list would be favored.
Cool. Yeah. Nice. All right.
And of course, my list would be favored as well. Just
It's
kidding.
always auto.
I totally. Yeah, so that's a really cool list. Guard are really awesome at the moment. They're in a pretty
Sweet.
good spot as well. Was there anyone else that you really want?
Jack Tight. I love his sister's list. A little bit of extra innovation from Jack. Jack is a boss, you know. Jack has been bossing it with sisters, and the top of the list says Nassim told me to play this, so I can see the small areas where it could be optimized. So, like the outline is standard, really. It's a little combination of a number of different lists. Where you have the Dialogus and the Palatine inside of a unit of 10 Battle Sisters. You have a second unit of 10 Battle Sisters, which is split up in an Immolator. You've
Ooh.
got Morven Vol and her 3 Paragon Warsuits, and you've got the Triumph
Oh,
of St.
cool.
Catherine.
Going for that.
Uh, yeah, so it's managed to squeeze everything into here. But in
Ah,
order to make the interesting part of the list work, there's 3 Castigators and no Exorcists. So
that's
there's
interesting.
no indirect fire, but the Castigators are a much more efficient kind of shooting platform
Yep.
if you can get them to shoot. And I think the meta heavily suits you switching over to battle cannon castigators
Yep.
compared to kind of sticking on the exorcists. AP1
Hmm.
ignore cover is excellent. Having the extra heavy bolters lets you have good targets into vehicles and into infantry.
Yep.
And this kind of list is kind of funky because once you get a lot of miracle dice, especially if you get sixes, because there's a saintly example character in here when it dies. If it's
Hmm.
near the triumph, you get a bunch of sixes. All of the sisters' vehicles have a 6-up invulnerable save.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, you can really start to squeeze out a lot of survivability.
Hmm.
There's a huge amount of anti-tank between the Palatine's unit as well as from the Paragon warsuits
Mm,
and also the Castigators. So it's good into all sorts of targets.
nice.
The Caldas Assassin probably should be Seraphim. There probably is a way of adding 2 Seraphim to this list pretty
Yeah.
easily. But Nassim wrote the list. Fucking yeah,
What can you do?
yeah. But it's really strong. Like I don't think you need the second Rhino. You can just swap that for Seraphim, and the list becomes super strong.
Nice.
Uh,
That's really
but
interesting, because a lot of people have been like on the Exorcist. You either do play him, you don't. I
yeah,
know you're a big fan of playing 3, and yeah, over 5 turns, very good, right? But if
it's
you
really
need something,
interesting. I was chatting on the Sister Act Discord about my kind of next innovations for the list and where I think it goes. And the very first thing to get cut out of the list is the Exorcist, I think.
hmm,
And I think as soon as you drop one, you just drop them all together and you
yeah,
just play, Liam VSL style. You don't need indirect fire. Just you get behind their walls and that's indirect fire.
direct fire, melee ranged units. Hmm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how sisters are going. I saw someone with an interesting list as well, actually, uh, who I think if he plays against Necrons is probably going to do quite well.
Hmm.
This is Alex Harrison's list, which is basically a lot of vehicles
Mhm.
and Gladiator Reapers, which have the anti-infantry gun as well, right? The devastating wounds one, which like
Yeah.
rerolls against infantry.
Yep. Hmm.
So yeah, I mean the wraiths have the infantry keyword,
Yep. They
so
do.
maybe that's the thinking there. Yeah, it's Black Templars with what's we call it, like a Tech Marine, which I think is fall back and shoot, or probably advance and shoot as well.
Hmm.
4 Crusader squads, 2 Black Templars and Pulsars, 2 Rhinos, 3 Gladiator Reapers, Gladiator Valiant. I don't know what. Maybe that's like a anti-tank one.
Yeah, it looks like it.
2 Eliminator squads, a Hellblaster squad, a Predator Destructor,
This is
3
the
Predator
list, Dave.
Destructors.
This is the list where if he hits assassinate, you just detach all the technomancers from the raids. Get rid of the infantry keyword. That would be funny.
Yes. But you can actually do that as well. It's kind of
Yeah, because you
funny.
find out the secondaries first.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, interesting list. I thought. I mean, this list seems terrible into just like the 2 best armies in the game, though. I would have to say, is this going
Yeah,
to be?
maybe. I mean, Alex is obviously a very good player, and he's got tools to play out a mission regardless. It's a threat saturation skewed list
It's a lot of
where
choices, yeah.
yeah,
But it is quite static, obviously, right? You are just driving up the board or coming from outflank and trying to shoot your opponent square in the face.
yeah.
So playing defensively against lists like this is obviously really good sometimes when they probably have not the best secondary game plan as well.
Or he just hits one person with loads of anti-tank and it just falls apart.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So that's the list. I mean, I think Daniel Whitaker is playing World Eaters, and Will Whitaker is playing 60 Accursed Cultists as well. Which
No change there. He won
yep,
last Super Major, so he's going to stick with it.
yeah, I would like to. I would actually like to get a game against 60 Accursed Cultists. So yeah,
There's actually, I don't think too many people running the Accursed Cultists, so it's kind of interesting. A lot of us have teched with that in mind. Well, at least I have.
yep.
And obviously Harrison, you can see he has there. So let's see how Will does. He
It's
might
a
have
lot
a
of
few more
models.
people with the answers to this list.
It's a lot of models to get together. But what I would say is that somehow so many people have gotten at least 12 wraiths together. And let me tell you a story. I assemble. I'm going to get it. Here we go. Here's one of my wraith. Oh, is it going to come into focus?
Oh,
Here
there
we
it
go.
is. Yeah.
Here's one wraith. There is like 33 parts to this one wraith. And it took me about 11 hours to just fucking assemble these things. And like,
Awful.
I was like, surely no one's going to have the patience to assemble this many wraiths as well.
Those are the ones you got to buy secondhand and then
Yeah, man. Oh my god.
and
Yeah,
then
I
just
should have got
paint
them
them.
pre-done. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bloody hell.
I
They
do that a
were,
lot nowadays.
that was bad. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think you're right when it's kind of akin to the Desolation Marines, isn't it? But the hobbying is so much more intense than just 30 Desolation Marines, right? It's like I'm not joking. Like one wraith, you could probably assemble like 5 Desolation Marines easily in the time of one wraith. I think. Yeah,
Oh man, yeah.
brutal.
Well, a lot of people have managed to do it. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, of course, right. So yeah, it's interesting. Well, I mean, Nottingham will be really cool.
Mhm.
I'm interested to see how how Necrons do as well. I kind of have a skating feeling that it doesn't really matter how well they do because of the tournament format and size, that it's going to be difficult to get a feel on it unless someone does make the top cut.
I think
So
looking at the overall stats is going to be useful, like because it's quite a high number of players. There's
yeah,
going to be a lot of games, so maybe
yeah,
we'll get an indication if none of them have gone like 2 and 3, and all of them have gone better than that. It's an
yeah, it's a good
indication
point.
that they're good.
Yeah, yeah. There we go. Any closing words, Vic?
Just this has been awesome. We'd love to hear your feedback on this format, and if you found the list interesting. Obviously, we can do loads of stuff with this kind of format. So, any ideas you guys got, just drop them in the comments. Let us know, and of course, leave a like, leave a subscribe, and anything from you, Dave.
Yeah, I'm just going to let the music do
Let's
the
do
talking.
it. See you at the fireside next time, guys.